Hey, what's up, guys? Let me know if you guys can hear me. I got a new mic, so um, I'm not sure how I'm coming in yet. Just let me know. It's picking up, but just let me know in the comments. Put one in the comments if you guys can hear me clearly. If not, then I have to fix something. But anyways, guys, welcome to another NukeStream. You guys know where to find me. Linktree, Nuclear Calillo on everything. And then Calillo Nuclear and on YouTube and on Twitter, right? Uh, but anyways, guys, I want to take a break from the red pill stuff for a minute, even though these stories have uh red pill lessons within them that I'm about to say, like my career and my short career in the military and all that. But for the most part, I take a break today. I'm still getting over a really bad flu. I'm not 100% yet, but I feel like tomorrow's the day where I wake up and I'm completely okay. So getting better and all that stuff. So, but today we're gonna talk about, my life, how the life of a reactor operator and how it comes to be. How do you get to that point where you're able to operate a reactor for the United States Navy? Right? It's an interesting career. It's very difficult, but I got through it and I just did my thing. Right. So yeah, we'll get started. Uh, so again, hey, Godspeed. Can you hear me in the chat? Am I coming in good? Is it too loud or too soft? Let me know. But anyways, guys, yeah. So as you guys know, my online name is Nuclear Calillo, right? So basically, thanks, Godspeed. Um, so basically, my name online is Nuclear Calillo. Now it sounds like a really cool name, or also sounds like a first person shooter kind of like name that you make so you can play on Xbox Live or something, right? But there's a reason I chose it. One is because I do have a nuclear background. I was in the nuclear navy, obviously. Then Calillo just means kind of like warlord or military leader, right? And I thought it was cool. I just sounded it sounded cool. Sounded cool at the time. My name before that was Dominican Chad, so that's where that comes from. And then it's the same in English and in Spanish, right? Because I am Hispanic and I talk to both people online. So yeah, for the most part, um, where do I begin, right? So I wasn't doing so well in college and I wanted a better future for myself. So after college, I decided to join the Navy, right? And the Navy, my father had did 20 years in the Navy and I wanted, I just wanted to be independent, right? Which the military gives you a really fast track into independence, right? Um, and all that. So as time goes on, um, I wanted a better life for myself. And eventually I was like, okay, well, how do I go about living more independently, but also having a brighter future, right? So I decided, hey, I'm going to join the nuclear navy. I could have joined any other branch or I could have joined any other job in the navy, but my ego and then my dad was like, hey, you're a smart guy, you can do this, right? I wholeheartedly believe that, and the nuclear navy really kicked my ass afterwards, right? So what ended up happening is I signed the papers and I thought I was going to be shipped away like in a month or two. And no, I had to wait like 9 months, right? So I signed the papers in February, and then around November is when I was going to ship out, November 4th. So I had to wait a long time, and I had a lot of time to contemplate my life and my decisions. Excuse me, I wasn't in a good place mentally, so I had a lot of time to think. I had to go back home and live with my parents, which sucked. It was hell on earth. Um, and yeah, essentially, I had to become uh so dependent because I didn't have an income, and I tried getting a job, and I did work odd jobs here and there, but I had to leave. Eventually I joined the navy, and basically my ship date came and then I got shipped off, right? So they first they shipped me to San Juan. I drove to, or they drove me, they picked me up and drove me to San Juan, Puerto Rico. And then I stayed in a nice hotel that night. And then in the morning, I got flown out to Chicago O'Hare Airport, right? Because that's where training is. I did the training there um, for 8 weeks. I was kind of fast tracked because it was the holidays since I started in November and all that. But um, yeah, around so I got there November 4th and I got on the bus and immediately screaming, all the boot camp stuff, right? And a lot of people wonder why in boot camp do they talk to you like that and why do they uh look down on you? Well, it's several reasons. One of the reasons is that they're trying to separate tone from good information. I think that's how I think that's what they wanted, right? So like if someone's screaming at you, you're able to pick out the pertinent information and realize that it's not personal that they're mad at you. They're just trying to relay information, right? Military can get a really it could be a really high stress job, right? It usually is, but when it comes down to it, you need to be able to get over that, understand that there's like a you know uh, a reason behind why people say things, right? So yeah, there you go. Separate tone from content. Exactly. Thank you, Stephen. So, uh, also, it's to break you down because they're trying to make you into a person that could be able to work with other people in the military, get over your individualism and like work as a team and all that stuff. So there's that. And on top of that, it's also you want to you know it's the discipline thing, right? They're trying to um, they're trying to get you into a type of person that takes care of themselves, right? Because the military, there's no one that cleans up after you. There's especially on a Navy ship, you got to keep the ship clean and all that stuff, and you have to be, showing up on time and all that, right? The mission is the mission, and it takes priority. You can't, um, you kind of can't wake up whenever you want, right? It's war. It's basically war, and you have to be able to be ready. And that's one of the things that you learn in boot camp, and also healthy eating habits. Like you eat a lot more in boot camp, but you gain muscle so fast. I gained like 20 pounds of muscle in like 2 weeks. It was, or sorry, not 2 weeks, 9 weeks. It was, yeah, because I was just eating, but we were always doing push-ups, planks. We were getting punished with physical activity, and then we did physical activity and all that stuff. Was it hard? For me, it was harder to just, it was the cold because I went there, Great Lakes, Chicago is very, very cold, especially in the winter. It was like we were marching out in minus 17 and the ground was frozen. And if we'd slip and fall, our RDCs would just laugh at us, right? So we had to be very careful. It was a cold. We had so many layers on and all that stuff. So yeah. Um, and also it was just, I got along well with my RDCs. RDC stands for Recruit Division Commander, which is like a drill sergeant. Um, and I got along with my RDCs, but it's just the outside ones were really dicks to us. We had a mixed division, meaning there was boys on one compartment, and then across the hall there was girls there, and yeah, it was pretty easy in terms of like academically. I was able to learn all the Navy lingo and stuff pretty easily, and also I understood that I had to be a wallflower here, so I stayed quiet. I didn't talk a lot. I just was um, I was to myself, right? And that served me very well, right? And that's a lesson that I took on for the rest of my life. It's just, you know, um, shut the hell up, right? If your opinion is not needed, or you don't need to contribute something, just be quiet, right? Because the more you say, the dumber you look, or the more you'll get in trouble, right? So yeah, it was an interesting experience. Then I graduated, had a graduation ceremony, and then right after graduation ceremony, I got shipped straight to South Carolina. South Carolina? Yeah, South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, right where we would train um in A school, power school, and prototype. So you as a nuke, you got to do three schools, right? When you do the three schools, after that, then you go to the fleet, right? So you don't go to the fleet right after boot camp. You have to go straight to A school, right? A school is like the first school that people in the military or in the Navy go to. It's where you learn your job, right? Because being a nuclear operator is so complicated and difficult, you have to go to three schools, right? And this was designed like by Admiral Rickover, right? Um, so so I get to nuclear field A school, right? And there, essentially, uh, you get there and you get your own little dorm and you share it with somebody. It's almost like a college campus. It's like much more strict, right? You're not allowed to leave site in the first like month, unless it's like for something very important, right? And you have to be in your dorm by like 11 p.m. or something like that every night, right? And obviously, you have to show up to class every day. If you don't show up to class, they'll come looking for you, right? So it's like college campus, but like more strict, 10 times more strict. So you in A school, you just you put on your brown uniform. We used to call them peanut butters. You put on your brown uniform, your NSUs, Navy service uniform, right? And you go to the schoolhouse. We call it it's called the Rickover building, right? Because Admiral Rickover is the father of nuclear navy. And then you take class. You take these classes every day for like 8 hours. You go take class, and the classes range from uh, A school is more of like the technical side, so you'll learn more of like electricity, electronics, all that stuff. And there's three rates, meaning three jobs that go to school for this. So there's mechanic, MM's machinist mate, there's electrician's mate, and then there's electronics technician, right? That's what I did. I was electronics technician. Electronics technician is the more academically difficult one. EMs and MMs. EMs obviously deal with more of the electrical side of the reactor, including turbine generators and stuff like that. And then MMs deal more with more of the mechanical side with like valves, pipes, uh, anything involving liquids and fluids and stuff like that. So when you get to the plant, all these systems mesh somewhere or another, and there's a lot of crossover. But that's what the school was divided into, right? So I would go learn about like basic electricity, mathematics, electronics, and different things like that. It was very difficult for me, right? And I thought I was smart until I went through A school. Then I realized, wait, I'm not as smart. There was kids there that could memorize things, look at something for like 15 seconds and memorize it for the rest of their life. And I had a lot of trouble, right? So because I had a lot of trouble, they had this thing called study hours, right? Where you had to study for a certain amount of hours after school. So you do 8 hours of school every day, and then you'd have to do study hours if you were behind or you didn't have the best grades, right? Everyone had to do a little bit. The dumber you were, the more your grades suffered. You had to do more study hours, right? Meaning that, like, I was put on, let's say, 10 tech threes, which meaning that every day you got to do at least 3 hours and you got to do 10 hours total, right? Or something like that. 10 tech one, something like that. 10 tech two, something like that. And then it got to the point where like if you were pushing 30 extra hours of studying a week, then they would consider failing you out or kicking you out and giving you another job in the Navy, right? I came close to that after A school because I was struggling so much and all that. Like I said, I wasn't in a good place mentally, but I pulled through. So what happened was they were like, "Hey, we're not sure if you have what it takes to be a nuke, right?" And then on the final day, they said we're going to give you an oral board, and if you have to answer these questions, right? And then I answered the questions. It was very nervous and all that stuff, right? And then when I answered them, they said, "Hey, you're staying. You pass." Right? And I was like, "Holy shit!" I almost cried, right? Um, and I was like, "Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna be a nuke for real now. Like, I got a second chance. I got to stop horsing around." So the second school is more like nuclear theory. It's like nuclear physics, chemical stuff, the chemical side. It's plant dynamics and all that stuff. I'm not gonna get more into that, right? This is all. Other than that, it's all confidential, right? So essentially, you learn more about the nuclear side, right? You've already learned electricity, electronics, how digital screens, digital inputs work, all that crap, right? Now you're learning the nuclear side, like what happens if you do this and what reactivity is and how reactor works, what fission is. what what mechanisms was fission use, neutrons, protons, whatever, all that stuff, right? So you learn that, and then that's another 6 months. So right now, you finish that school, we're at a year. We still haven't touched the ocean, right? Um, Nuke School is very interesting because it's a whole bunch of nerds from different backgrounds getting together, and like you would have guessed, like one of the big red pill lessons in all this is that when there were females around, right, as with any job where there's very little women, if they were attractive, they would almost always get caught doing stuff they weren't supposed to. Like they were hanging out in a dude's dorm and all that stuff, right? What happens is a lot of women join the military and they've never been the hot chick, right? And then they join the military and all of a sudden they're the extremely hot chick, right? Everyone's obsessed with them, because just the fact that these are nerdier dudes, right, that aren't used to being around hot women. Plus, there's just no women around, right? So the superiors pump them up and make them class leaders and all that stuff, give them faux uh, positions of power, right? And then everyone else praises them and talks about them on campus, and then the chads hook up with them, sleep with them, and then they always get in trouble, right? It's almost always they always get in trouble and all that. You have a lot of the people marrying right away. They meet somebody and then 2 months they get married because of the benefits, and also they just that's what you do in the military. Apparently, you get married, right? Um, yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, the my favorite part though of A school and power school was the gym. The gym was really nice. Made a lot of gains there. Hit my first 3 plate deadlift there. A lot of cool people in the gym, and it was just really nice, right? The gym was military gyms are state of the art, are always the best. I've always experienced the best from military gyms. So yeah, I had a great time lifting weights at the Bowman Center in South Carolina. Right, shout out to the Bowman Center. Yeah, you guys are responsible for a lot of my gains. And the gym was like a 2 minute walk, right? So I just get up on Saturday mornings, get a pump. I didn't know much about lifting, right? I thought lifting, I just started really lifting there and learning about biomechanics and that too. So I was like lifting and going to A school, power school. I had no social life, right? I didn't have video games, nothing. I just lifted and I had studied. I was very stressed, but the lifting helped me, right? So, oh, and the food, the food galley, which was open 3 times a day. You go get food, you eat, and then that's it, right? And it was really good to eat there and all that stuff. The food is it's like Southern comfort food, so I built a lot of muscle on that food: catfish, chicken fried steak, sweet potato fries, mashed potatoes, lots of yogurt, and it was just like you could take as much as you want. You could go as much as you want, right? It was awesome, right? I had a really good time at that galley, and I would always find someone to sit and eat with, so it was good times. And then breakfast was good too. Um, Other than that, I didn't really do much, right? I was always studying. I did try to date. I met a chick through Plenty of Fish, right? This is when dating apps were like barely taking off. This is like 2014 and all that. So yeah, it was an interesting time, um, and all that. I had no car, and I still found a way to date and all that stuff. So interesting. Uh, what's another thing? Okay, so another thing uh was that it was a very nice campus. It was covered. It was like and it's in a swamp too, and it's kind of smelly sometimes, South Carolina. But the campus, other than that, it was very nice. It was just in the summer, it was very, hot and muggy and all that stuff. So yeah. Um, but yeah, essentially that's my life as A school and power school. The last school though, they gave me the choice to live off base. Um, and I lived off base. I got an apartment with a buddy, and that was really nice. But I was constantly stressed because now you had the morning commute and all that stuff. And so basically, the third leg of the school is like you have to go to prototype school, which is a hands-on approach, right? So they give you a real reactor to operate, and these are like old submarines that they towed out to the river, right next to the base, and then you would have to go and you'd have to a list of check what's called a checkout, and basically checkout is like, hey, I'm going to talk about this, and you're going to qualify me. I'm going to prove to you that I know this system um, on board the submarine, and I have to and you're going to approve of it and sign it, and you're going to approve, right? And then there throughout the school, there's several tests and stuff like that, and yeah, so basically, that's essentially how qualifying is in the nuclear navy, is that you get a sheet or a booklet, and they say, hey, you got to prove you know this stuff. You got to talk to somebody that's qualified to sign and to qualify you that system. So if you want to talk about reactor safety or something like that, you got to talk go to the electronics technician and be like, hey, um, can we talk about reactor safety? And then I'd ask you questions and to prove that you know that stuff. And if you didn't know, I'd be like, hey, you need more time on the subject, or you don't, right? Um, but yeah, essentially, as time goes on, you get better at it. But I had a lot of trouble because people were assholes, right? Nukes aren't known for being happy people. They're very a lot of them are very bitter and salty because they're overworked at sea, and then they come back, and then these instructors are very angry or bitter or salty because they wanted a different command after they got out of sea and stuff like that. So essentially, that's what ends up happening is that you don't you go into the submarine, you do a couple operations, you start it up, shut it down, do all these things, and then eventually you get qualified. This was very difficult for me as well because while I was qualifying, right, um, I had a lot of trouble asking for help. I had a lot of trouble proving myself. I messed up a couple times and all that. And this is again, they're like, "Hey, you sure you want to do this? Like, you don't seem to be doing that well." And then I said, "No, I want to do this. I want to be a nuke, right?" And I stayed in, guys. And then eventually I passed and I graduated. And I had to board with a uh, a scientist or something, or a nuclear engineer from like the Department of Defense or something, to prove that I knew all the systems, right? Um, and yeah, that's basically what ended up happening, and I got to the fleet, right? So I get to the fleet, and I'm just like, okay, cool. I'm qualified to go to the fleet now, finally. And then 2 days later, I get deployed. So I get deployed. And I go all over the world. When I say all over the world, I mean Europe and the Middle East, right? It's because this is when ISIL and ISIS was like at their peak, so we were going out there bombing them. So we did operations out there, and the thing is, like when you get to what do you call it, the fleet, right? You don't automatically, they say, hey, well, here's the reactor, right? You have to actually like qualify again, right? So you qualify reactor operator on a test submarine in South Carolina. Now I'm in Norfolk on a carrier, just checked on board on a carrier, and I'm lo and behold, I'm bottom of the totem pole again. I'm nobody. So I'm like, oh shit, like I gotta qualify again, right? So you start with a basic qualification, so you understand the basic parts of the ship, right? And um, then you get moved to your division, right? There's several divisions, right? There's the RC division, which is like reactor controls, which is me. We are the ones that control the reactor and operate. And there's RE, which is reactor reactor electrical division. That's more of the turbine generator side and all that stuff. And then you have the RM, which is reactor mechanical, which is the mechanical side of the reactor. And then we have RL, which is reactor laboratories, which is more of like the chemical side and all that stuff, taking samples and all that. And then there's other smaller divisions that also support. RP, reactor propulsion, which is more of to do with the propulsion side of the reactor and all that stuff. So essentially, um, you get to the fleet, you go do your basic qualification, and you get to move to division. Then you start qualification, right? And then you start out as like a phone talker, like just a guy that picks up the phone and relays information. Now, this is hard at first because you got to learn how to say comms and say things really fast, right? So they'll throw out, hey, phone talker, these four valves are open and these four valves are shut. And if you don't say it perfectly verbatim, then they're gonna keep asking you to repeat it back until you say it right. And people get frustrated with you, right? Also, you get sent on food runs, and you also get sent on drink runs. You're kind of like the punching bag of the control room, right? And you get tired of it, and then eventually you qualify to throttleman. The throttleman is the one that pushes the amount of steam, right? So the reactor operator sits in the middle. He has two throttlemen on his sides. One is usually an EM, the other one's an ET, and then you're operating, and then you have both of these guys on your side. And you as reactor operator, you tell them, hey, throttleman, the bell comes up, and then they answer the bell based on speed, and they push their throttles up, and then the ship goes faster, right? So that's a lot of responsibility, right? As reactor operator, you're in charge of those people, right? So then after throttleman, you qualify instrument watch, which basically is like a roving watch. You just walk around the plant and check dials and all that stuff, and all that. Every hour you do your checks and all that stuff, right? And then eventually the big qualification, which is reactor operator, and that takes a long time to qualify, right? There's so many things you have to learn. You have to learn the plant like the back of your hand. It is the most difficult qualification, and it takes time. And a lot of people fail their boards. There's so many boards you got to do. You got to do a board with your boss, then your officer, and then after your officer, you got to do it with your officer's boss, and then finally the head of the nuclear department, and then after that, the captain of the ship. Right. So you have to. It's really rigorous, right? And there's a reason why former nukes we get hired so much, and people want us because we're used to the grueling uh, qualification process in addition to other things. So once I was able to start qualifying reactor operator, it was a very difficult road, right? There were some things that I got instantly. I wasn't, and then I realized where I shine as a operator wasn't my intelligence so much as it was my ability to take command and control in the plant, right? And this was shown multiple times throughout my career. So after I qualified reactor operator, which is very difficult, right? Um, I started uh, I started operating, and I had a lot of command and control. I was able to push the ship fast when I needed to go fast, slow when I needed to go slow. I was able to do drills, casualties. I've saved the ship from itself several times, right? And it was very interesting to see that I finally was hitting my stride in my life, right? I was like 28, um, and I was finally able to say, "Hey, I qualify reactor operator. I'm turning my family. I'm turning my family around. Like my family came from like poverty and nothing, and my dad came here. He did his 20 years in the Navy, and now his we went from being people that were living in huts in Dominican Republic a couple generations ago to now I get to serve in the United States Navy. And I didn't like it very much, and I did my complaining like everyone else, but I always got the job done. But at least I am lucky that I had the opportunity to do this because this is not easy. This is the hardest thing I'll ever do. I know for a fact I'll ever do. Nothing as compared to how hard this was. And I'm very glad that I had the opportunity and the balls and the grit to fucking get through this career. So, all right. PSI says, what age did you join the Navy? About 23 is when I signed. Yeah. So 23 and I got out at 29. So yeah. Um, yeah, very interesting time being on the ship. The hardest part for me being on the ship was one of the hardest parts was I got used to it. It's what I didn't like is like you're a reactor operator, you're a nuclear electronics technician, you have all this responsibility and all this expectation of you, and you're basically one of the smartest people on the ship, right? And if you're not smart, then you've found a way to pretend to be smart. But you had to work with a lot of people on the ship that were not smart, right? Guys that took their jobs too seriously, right? And all that. And it was tough, right? Because like dealing with people whose job was to fill paperwork out or whose job was to take out trash and all that, right? And then your job was to keep the reactor from melting down. That's that disparity in terms of importance on in the Navy kind of messes with you a little bit, right? So I had to learn to just bite the bullet and just be like, hey, everyone on the ship has signed a contract. They have a job to do. Get over yourself and all that, right? Um, but yeah, it was just difficult, right? Because I had to, I had this big responsibility, but you know, honestly, I had to share I had to share a ship with people that were that barely got in based on their intelligence, right? So Soji says, "Are there any movies, anime, comics, or manga that accurately depict a reactor operator?" Man, good question. Trying to think. Uh, Honestly, I don't think so. It's just such an elusive, like it's just a topic that it's a topic that really people don't really know a lot about nuclear stuff, right? Um, and I think eventually, you know, people watch movies and stuff like that, and it's just like I always watch. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. No, that's not really how it works. That's not like this. That's not like that. Blah blah. Right, but I would say for the most part, um, I no, not really. Trying to think of a movie, a Navy movie where maybe one of those real life Navy. Oh, well, no. I was gonna say Down Periscope, but that's a comedy. It's not really to be taken seriously. But I would say any realistic Navy movie, like The Hunt for Red October or stuff like that. Those are the closest you'll get. Um, but realize too, there's a lot of it's confidentiality too. So yeah, is Homer Simpson a reactor operator? Yes. So Homer Simpson does what I does, but I think in his job he's like a safety guy. Um, so basically, Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, his friend was a nuclear reactor operator, an electronics technician, what I did, right? So he based Homer Simpson on him, right? Based on the stories that Matt Groening's friend would tell him about the nuclear navy, right? Um, and then Mr. Burns is based on Admiral Rickover, right? Admiral Rickover was known to be an asshole, kind of like mean, and would be kind of like rude to people and all that stuff, especially to people that he needed money from, like Congress and stuff like that, for his reactors, right? So that's what Mr. Burns is based off of too. So the Hunt for Red October seemed to me to hint at it, but it was more on the attack subside. Yeah. Um, yeah. Do you have to be born in America to serve in nuclear navy section? Yeah, you do. They don't accept foreign nationals. My dad was a foreign national, and that slowed down the process. Right, I was born in the United States, but foreign nationals cannot be nuclear operators. Yeah, as of today, I don't. I doubt they would. With the way U.S. politics are going, it could change, but yeah. Nuclear reactors is what gives our Navy the big advantage, right? All other countries, they may have one or two, but we have 11 nuclear aircraft carriers. By the Constitution, we have to have 11. And then we have like what, like 50 submarines, 30, 40, 50 submarines that are nuclear too. Like no one's taking down the United States, guys, like anytime soon. If they do take the United States, it's by like cultural subversion, like what China's doing. But like military wise, we can take on every single military all at once, all the time. Um, we just have that powerful of a navy. It's a nuclear aircraft carrier has like what, 25 jets on board, maybe 30. That's enough. That's enough to scare any country into submission, right? Um, you got to understand that all these people that are like scared and all that stuff about other countries taking over us militarily, it's not going to happen, right? I personally have felt the power of the sun in my hands, right, with a single switch that's like the size of this wallet right here. That's how big the switch was. I had enough power to push an aircraft carrier to full speed. and the aircraft carrier is the fastest ship we have in the military, right? We have two nuclear reactors on board, right? Me and my buddy, I would operate one, someone else would operate the other, and I would push that reactor to full speed every single easily, right? I was trained. I was a 27-year-old guy pushing a reactor to full speed, right? And yeah, so uh, you guys don't understand the amount of power nuclear is, right? I would I didn't understand it because when I was training at prototype, it was just a submarine, right? And the reactor was small. But when I got to the aircraft carrier, and I was inside the control room, and I was um, shimming my way. Shimming is like changing the level of the half DM rods inside the reactor, right? I was shimming my way to 100% bell, right? Pushing the reactor to its limit in order so we can go make the carrier go as fast as possible, right? We're doing drills. And then they said, hey, back full emergency, right? That's like you're going 180, like the fastest your car can go. You're flooring it. You've been flooring it for like 2 minutes. You're going down a straight highway. You're flooring it, you know, and all of a sudden you slam on the brakes and hit reverse. That's what they asked me to do, right? That's a normal belt back full emergency, right? That's as if like that's like if the ship needs to slow down because we're going to hit something, right? And going from full power, like full like forward, like it's like we're like hand or foot on the pedal to the metal to go reverse instantly, right? That's going to put a lot of mechanical strain on the aircraft carrier, right? And the nuclear reactor, you have to maintain it at the same level of power, right? Because all that nuclear power, all that steam going into the main engines, right, is now the main engines are going like this. Now they're going to go like this instantly, right? It takes time. They're not going to instantly, right? But the ship starts shaking. It's like an earthquake inside the ship. The whole ship shakes to the point where, like, if your door or your berthing is in the back of the ship, backpacks will fall, things will fall off the bed, and all that stuff, right? And that's two kids that are 27 years old doing that, right? And that's the power of American exceptionalism as well, right? Where I get a little, kind of like, come on, when guys are just like America is like worst in the world for like constantly complaining about this country. Like, you guys don't understand how freaking great this country is in terms of how we do certain things. Like, we have 27-year-olds operating the most powerful, one of the most powerful things that we have in existence, which is a nuclear reactor inside of a ship. 27, 26. The youngest guy I've ever seen operate one was like 23, 22, maybe even 21, right? And and I'm just saying, like, you guys don't understand the people that complain about this country and how bad it is, right? You don't understand how powerful we are as a military. Like, we understate it, right? Because not only that, as reactor operator, I also control the steam for the catapults that launch the planes, right? And those planes are launching every day for 16 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, right? Um, and when that happens, guys, like the reactor also, you could see the effect on the reactor because you're pushing steam up to catapult riser valves that push the ship, push those catapults to launch planes. And we do that all day. So those pilots are very experienced because they're constantly qualifying. They have to qualify too, right? Those pilots are very experienced, right? And then we go out and then we go bomb whatever thing, right? It's ridiculous to think that the Navy, the U.S. The United States Navy alone could take care of any military problems we have overseas, right? It's ridiculous, right? So, uh, was the boot camp experience like Jarhead or Full Metal Jacket because instructors put hands on you? Oh no, that's over. That's way over, right? They can get in your face and all that, but you can't. They can't put their hands on you. That's over. I don't. At least in the Navy, I don't know how it is in the other, but that's it's a kinder, softer Navy now. Oshman, nuclear physics sounds cool. I have a big ass book of physics. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's a different world, um, and all that. It's just very interesting. Not interesting when your whole livelihood depends on it, but like just to learn on the side, yeah, it's very fun. Uh, Opium says this country's awesome. we've been to 14 in the past 10 years, and this country's still the best. Yeah, America is pretty awesome, right? I don't understand this hate for America. I understand that, maybe culturally we don't know where we're going in terms of like intersexual dynamics and like all that. But once you get over that and you learn your way through that, America's freaking great, right? I got a taste of full raw American ingenuity in my hands, the power of the sun in my hands. And most carriers or most navies are barely functional, right? And we have 11 carriers by the Constitution. We constitutionally speaking, we have to have 11 carriers, right? And I was in the USS Truman, and I can tell you right now, it was like an inflect. It was a very crazy. It's like when Oppenheimer saw the explosion when he did the Trinity test, and when the first time I took the reactor and I saw how the whole ship was shaking, right? I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. You know, humans, we're better than we think we are. For we complain about ourselves so much, but we took the power of the sun, put it in a lead cylinder, and we use it to power 100,000 tons and 4 football fields of sovereign American territory. And not only push a ship, make it the fastest ship in the Navy, and not only that, make it the fastest ship able to slow down and go backwards. It's almost like within 2 minutes, right? That's insane. That's insane. That's incredible. And I got to operate it for 4 years. It was very painful for me. I suffered a lot to be able to learn and all my personal problems, right? But just the fact that I had the privilege to do that is insane, right? And like I was explaining to a friend today, that's the issue I have with this content creation stuff, where I get to make I get to do shows with very smart people, right? Very intelligent people, people that are experienced. Like Rule Zero is just a cast of smart people, right? You have people with DoD backgrounds. You have Aaron Clary is a world class economist and all that. You have all these guys that are writers, very what do you call it? Very well read and good writers, smart. They're thinkers. They took this intersectional dynamic stuff, they applied it to their own um, lives, and also their own professions. Like Aaron Clary does the whole economy side of intersectional dynamics and all that, right? And I read Rational Mel when I was in the military too, and I really needed it because all the we'll get into the stories with women and all that stuff, um, but when I see different channels and different people make content, um, and it just seems like they haven't done their due diligence in anything, right? They don't have the experience, nor do they're not well read. They're ego invested in every little belief that they come across. They don't challenge themselves academically. To them, it's like a hobby, but the hobby where they are the best, even though like a lot of these guys do this for a living and they know their shit, right? And it's hard for me to like um you know kind of take a lot of content creators seriously, because it's like, listen, man, I'm not saying I take it seriously or I don't, right? That's a matter of perspective. You may think this is my hobby, right? And it very well could be. But um do you really think that I'm going to have a discussion with someone who isn't at least intellectually, not it's not even about intelligence. It's about like, how should I say this? There's a word for this, right? And I don't know what it is, but it's I'm not gonna argue on things that are reality and the things that are like uh, that are like clear as day, right? The way I think and the way I was trained to think in the military was that there's a reason for things. Find out, right? If there's this alarm or there's this level in a tank or there's this pump is doing this, you got to go find out because you have a nuclear reactor to take care of, and if something's wrong, it's on you, right? And that's why that's that mentality. When I first read the Rational Male, got into this Red Pill stuff. People do things for reasons, right? It's not that we just get together and we make up things about women because we feel like it's fun or we don't like women. No, um, but when it comes down to it, people do things for a reason. There's a low tank level in the plant for a reason. Go investigate, right? This girl did this to you. This other girl did the same thing. Why? Find out. Do some research, right? Read a book. Talk to people online. Don't just come to your own conclusion based on what you feel, right? You have to go find out, right? And when I do these shows, a lot of people, it just feels like that. It feels like, so why did you come to this conclusion, or why are you using this weird stat to prove something that doesn't really reflect reality, right? And that's one of the things that we see in in a lot of these debates, right, where it's like, um oh, marriage isn't that bad. Men aren't getting married because they don't know better. And I'm like, they don't know better? Did I just not tell you guys that there are 24-year-olds operating nuclear reactors, the most powerful navy of all time? No, we can take on every single country right now if we wanted to, right? We have one of the only full functional navies in the world. We can take on every single country, and those nuclear reactors and those throttles and those main engines, that whole reactor room and mechanical room, they're all being run by young kids with maybe one or two older guys like in their 30s that are like, you know, right? When Fukushima happened, I don't know if you guys remember Fukushima. Um, One of our carriers got sent out there for support, right? And they sailed through that cloud of radiation, and all the airborne radiation detectors got got activated, right? It was pretty bad. So they were sailing through that cloud, and then they parked outside of Japan. And Japan was embarrassed, right? There's an honor culture, and they were embarrassed that there was a ship full of young kids operating reactors outside of their country, but they couldn't keep their reactors safe. So they would come out with a boat to test the water around their carrier as close as legally possible, and they would go and test it, right? And the water around the reactor was always clean, right? There was no nuclear waste, there was no fission products in that water, nothing. We proved to the world that these 24-year-olds who have to operate, test this water, and keep this ship running, um, are better and more equipped than a lot of other grown men. When I say grown men, I'm like people that operate reactors for a long time. Um, and that's you know we treat these men like they don't know better, like they're dumb, right? You think a guy that's 25 looks at the dating market and just like, hey, this is tough. I don't think it's a good idea to get married because I just don't see the benefit, right? What do I get out of it? And then we tell these men they're lost, they're stupid, they need guidance, they need God, they need this, like that. And that's the part about these debates that gets me mad, right? I'm like, hey, do you think men are just stupid because they don't go with the program, right? No, men are not stupid. They're a little naive. They're horny. They think with their penis too much sometimes, right? But for the most part, most guys kind of like, this doesn't really benefit me. I'm going to hold off, right? And that would require um tradcons, uh thoughts, whatever faction of people, right, to kind of look at and be like, hey, marriage really is an outdated technology, right? But I digress. All right. Great experience. I thought your Air Force was the best. I don't know. Navy is the best Air Force in the world, personally speaking. Although we no longer have the best looking women. Yeah, that's the only thing we suck at. US women are the worst. Like, I travel the world, guys, and I dated women from different backgrounds. And I can say right now, um, now, does obesity exist in other countries? Yes. Are there women that are like bitchy and it suck in other countries? Yes. But I will say something, right? And my observation from a guy who started dating outside of this country in Puerto Rico, and now I date in the United States. The biggest thing that I miss is the femininity, right? Um, the femininity to me is what like I miss most about women in the United States, right? And every girl the definition of what femininity is like, no, women don't, it's a lost art, right? For example, when those girls at the gas station were dancing, and like, there's nothing wrong with that, they're just dancing, it's probably annoying if you were there trying to pump gas or something, right? But a lot of people were saying like, oh, I guess men don't like feminine women, and I'm just like, there's no feminine women. Like, none of those women are feminine. What we're seeing is, like I said, defective women are becoming defective men, which translates to they're just acting like boys, right? They're dancing like 15-year-old boys. That's not, as a man, physically speaking. Yeah, some of them look great, but like, in terms of femininity, femininity is something that I think every man should experience once, like true unfettered femininity, right? That means if you have to go overseas for like 2 weeks and get yourself, a girl just to hang out with, just to experience, don't even worry so much about where, if looking for a wife, just feel that femininity once so you understand what a woman really is, right? Because right now, what we're seeing is that American women are very spoiled compared to the rest of the world. And it just seems like it's more like a princess kind of, they're like more like princesses. But now it's like true femininity is like, it's almost hard to describe, right? It's like talking to a woman and immediately feeling calm and relaxed, and that you want to take care of her instantly, right? Like instantly, like if this girl were on my program, she'd never have to worry about anything ever again, right? And I've met hot chicks where I'm just like, man, this chick is hot, but I would, she'd have to like do a lot, have a lot going for her in order for me to commit. But there are girls that are just like, like a 6 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10, but they're so feminine and happy and kind of like optimistic that you meet them, and then and you say to yourself like, yeah, I could date this chick, and I would make sure she never needs anything ever, right? But American women, that's a lost art. Femininity doesn't exist really that much anymore. So yeah. Uh, USS Ronald Reagan. Yeah, I wanted to get on the Reagan. I think no, was my friend on the Reagan? No, he was on the Ike. One of my best friends was on the Ike, the Eisenhower. Uh, Sadly, half the countries we've been to had more attractive women than America. Yeah, most countries have more. Like, yeah, Latin America, all more attractive. Southeast Asia, if that's your flavor, you'll find. I personally, my biggest gripe here too is that the Latinos here in the United States are not so great. They're like a bastardized version of the Latinos back home, right? Um, but yeah, yeah, girls didn't even know how to be girls. Like, watch them walk in heels; they walk like drunk frat boys. Yeah, exactly. It's just they don't, you know. We should just bring Ukrainian women here, good looking, good genetics, higher than average IQs. Yeah, Ukrainian women are beautiful. PSI, what are your opinions of the armies of Russia and China? I understand they don't come close, but they are really no threat. I'm telling you guys. I'm telling you guys. I held one of the most expensive thing we have, probably, which is the reactor inside of a carrier. I held that in my hand. Um, and also, as a reactor operator, you have to be a perfectionist, right? So when you do your paperwork, like for example, there's paperwork that you have to certify that the reactor's ready to start up, right? So you go with a friend and you do a check off where you're like checking every system of the reactor room to make sure that, hey, this reactor is safe to start up. Nuclear Caudillo, 28 years old, and certifying a whole ass reactor that it is okay to start up with no issues, right? So I do that. I start up the reactor. Um, I do that check off, and then there's like 20 pages, something like that, right? And I have to get it signed by like my whole chain of command and the plant chain of command too, right? And then when I turned it in once, they noticed that one number that should have been a one or should have been a two, I wrote it as a one, right? And that whole checkoff had to be redone. Everything had to be redone. No one caught it until my boss, and they all got yelled at, and then I got yelled at for in 20 page report. I wrote the number two instead of one by accident. I did everything right. I wasn't thinking. I wrote number two instead of number one, and yeah, I got screwed over. No one caught the error. So, um, You have to be a perfectionist. Your paperwork has to be perfect, no mistakes. You gotta also you have to um have good handwriting and all that stuff. And we do nothing on the computer. Everything is handwritten, right? And then we got to keep those records in a box for every reactor startup and shutdown we do. And then agencies come out to the ship to to audit everything from how we operate, how we do drills, how we look, our appearance, and also all the paperwork we do. And then they give us a grade, right? And if we don't pass that grade, if we don't pass, they're going to take our keys away from us. And then now the Navy is screwed because we have one less carrier on the ocean because we weren't able to do our jobs as reactor operators, right? So yeah, shit, we gave the billions. We should get something for it. Yeah, but yeah, guys. So life, day to day life outside of like my training and all that stuff, you get up. So you work every day. You have watch every day. Sundays we're more relaxed. It's more like a we don't have muster. We just get up and whatever you have to do, whatever maintenance you have to do, you do it if you have it. Usually you don't want to leave it for Sunday, so you get it done before and all that. You may have to stay on watch for a couple hours, maybe 3, 4, 5 hours, and all that. Uh, and then every day is the same. It becomes Groundhog's Day, right? You're out at sea so much that it's like over. It's the same thing. So the days kind of like just fly by. Um, as if you're not qualified reactor operator, you're not really allowed to play video games. You have to be always working and qualifying, right? So you're allowed to play video games after hours, like at night in your rack, but like during the day, you're not allowed to be playing video games usually. Um, so there's that. And yeah, you get called what's called a nub, which is a non-useful body, right? Meaning you're not qualified reactor operator, meaning you can't do maintenance, you can't do much. You're only qualified the lower watches. So those are helpful, but at the same time, uh, reactor operators uh, they need support on the watch, or else you're going to be standing a lot more watch. In port, life sucks because as a reactor operator, because um, you don't the duty section is half of what the ship is, right? So duty section is like every certain amount of days you have to stay on board the ship for 24/7 or for 24 hours or overnight um, in order to wash the ship, do your rounds. Maybe you support the security watch bill, like you get a gun and you do rounds around the ship and all that stuff, um, and all that, right? For nukes, so the ship was like usually 8 section, meaning like every 8 days you'd have to stay on the ship for a couple hours. For nukes, right, the best we ever got was 4 section, right? Meaning that every 4 days you'd have to stay on the ship, right? You had to stay on the ship for 4 days, or sorry, for a 24 hours on that fourth day. And the thing is, like after you stay on the ship overnight, you don't get to go home in the morning. You still work a full day, right? So you had to get up, shower, do all that stuff, and then you go straight to straight to work, right? And then at the end of that workday, you get sent home, right? And the thing is with nukes, since we have so much work to do and so much qualifying to do, we're usually the last people to leave the ship for the day. We're in port, right? So we were leaving every day at 5. You get up at 5 and you have to muster and be ready in formation around 6:30, 7, and you don't get to go home until 5, and that's every day, right? While you see everyone else on the ship leave like at 1 or 2 or sometimes 11 in the morning, right? Um, and yeah, it sucked. Like you didn't have much of a life. I didn't really have much of a life. But the little weekends I had, I enjoyed them and I relished them because you know you you don't you don't have a lot of time. So yeah, it was not the greatest life, but I got through it. 6 years of it, it sucked, but and that's the best we got. Three section was a lot of the times the norm, which is like every 3 days. So you never had a full weekend, right? Even if you had, let's say, you had uh, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, you would have to come in for a long time and all that stuff. So yeah, food wasn't good. Food was very bad. I mean, there were days when the food was good, but and all that. But for the most part, food wasn't so good, and you were fighting for a place in line with people that never worked, whose purpose was to just hang around on the ship and do nothing, right? And you're like waiting in line so you can eat, so you can go start up a nuclear reactor or shut a nuclear reactor down. But there were people whose job was to take out trash or something, and it's just like, listen, dude, you've been waiting in this line for 20 minutes before chow opens, um, and I have to go start up a reactor, and I have to be well fed, right? Or else, you don't like if something happens, a lot of bad things can happen. So yeah, it could be very frustrating sometimes, but I'm glad it's over. Yeah, I'm just really glad it's over. In terms of, I made the best friends, and obviously in military you make the best friends. Um, to this day, some of them live in Dallas here with me, and they're all great people. I see them from time to time. Um, you do make a lot of enemies too. There's a lot of like cliques, and all that. But at the end of the day, we just kind of get the job done and all that. I did firefighting on the side too. They made me do firefighting. I didn't want to at first, but after a while, I got the hang of it. They made me fire team leader. So I was a firefighter for a bit. I was pretty good at it. It was very fun, but like you don't always want to do it because you're tired, you're overworked, and all that stuff, and all that. So, and then what was the other thing? Uh, so in terms of like intersexual dynamics, I learned a lot of stuff in the military in terms of like how to deal with women in the workplace and what to stay away from. My best decision, one of the best decisions I ever made, was to stay away from dating women in the military. That was a very smart decision. I did hook up with a couple female sailors, but like they were in other departments or other ships, and it was very like we didn't have a lot of of to we didn't have a lot of connection, right? It was just like we were in different ships, different commands, different divisions. Like it was, I definitely stayed away people from my division. Not that I hated them, but it was just like it just brings so much drama. A lot of people in the military get a lot of drama in their division because people are hooking up with they're not supposed to, right? I've lost bosses to this, good bosses, because they hooked up with someone they're not supposed to, and it sucks, right? Because you see how the favoritism and all that because now your boss is hooking out with a girl and that girl is all of a sudden qualifying faster. She's getting hookups and stuff like that. Like we used to call it hookups for fuck ups. If for people that constantly got hookups, but they were not the greatest sailors and lazy people overall. Um, but yeah, so I just stayed away from the girls. I saw a couple Me Too's. That was terrifying. So whenever I was out with people with my crew and in our division, I made sure to not drink too much around the women, and like if they had any advances, I would just shut down their advances because I was just scared. Like it's not worth it, right? I got a lot of respect amongst the women on board because of this. I wasn't like sneaky and every time, and there were times when women were outright get drunk and try to hook up or and all that. And even, some of them even had boyfriends or husbands, and I would be like, no, stay away, right? So I got a little bit of respect because of that. I wasn't known as creepy or an opportunist, so that's good, guys. If you guys ever decide to join the military, do the same. Just stay away from the women. Um, you'll have flirty female bosses, just like any workplace. Tell them their hair looks nice. Be nice to them. Do some of their work for them, and all that. Um I remember I made a girl or a female officer. I pissed her off so much because I didn't do something. I remember, and it wasn't even my fault, but I was so low ranking that it was my fault, right? Um, and she just screamed at me in the office for like 5 minutes, and I didn't even know what I did yet until like the third minute of screaming, right? And that's when I learned, like, hey, I gotta stay away from women altogether. These women, this is a high rank, she's an officer, right? And she's also was prior enlisted, so she should know the dance. And but she was screaming in front of everybody in the office, and I was just like, uh, damn, this is really happening, right? I don't even know what I did, and that's when I was like, okay. So luckily, the job I have now, I don't really work. My account manager, she's great, but I don't really work with her face to face. She's remote. So I just work with all men now, and it's great. But I learned my lesson. I was kind of traumatized from dealing with women in the military professionally. They I was not impressed. Right, the women that were at my rank and all that stuff, they were they were all right. But some of them were very mean to the other guys. Like there was once where I was operating the plant, and a girl comes in and says, "Hey, did you see so and so's Tinder profile?" Like making fun of him, right? Somebody we knew on the ship. And then I just stepped in and said, "Hey, I saw yours the other day too. It's not that impressive." And she never kind of like around me. She would never say things like that because I'm like, "Hey, like, why are you being like this? You know, like why are you being so mean?" Women are very mean. Reputation destruction, full reputation destruction mode sometimes, and it was tough, right? Lots of cheating on board, all that too. There was some babies conceived on board and all that. But all in all, guys, like if you guys are gonna do the military thing, if you're thinking about it, just stay away from the girls. Respect them. Let them be right. Um, try to get on their good side, um, as much as you can because they have a lot of power and they once they don't like you they'll go after you and all that stuff, right? So yeah. Um, in terms of experience I got, I get hit up and text every week for some company somewhere in the United States that wants to hire me, right? I never had after I joined the Navy, I never had an issue getting a job. So look, right now I'm a field service technician and it's great. I make good money for like not that much work. Um, and I get to live in a nice cozy apartment in um, one of the nicest places in Dallas. And I appreciate the experience and I set myself up for life, right? And now I get to talk about intersexual dynamics with you guys. I have the time to build a channel and all that stuff, so it's great. Um, I didn't have any time in my 20s. I was constantly tired, depressed, or trying to qualify reactor operator. And I did date a little bit, and I did date some pretty girls in the military and all that stuff. But for the most part, it was just not my focus. Not my focus at all. I tried, but like I just had a military career to kind of focus on because being a nuke is extremely stressful, right? Especially if you're not incredibly smart like other guys were. So yeah, now that I'm in my 30s, I'm kind of more laid back, sitting back now. Now I'm kind of more urgent, trying to make more money. Maybe this YouTube stuff will, you know, help take off more, and I can make more money, right? But for the most part, I'm really relaxed. I'm not really worried that much about anything. So it's a blessing to be able to be in this position, right? I'm glad that I had the fortitude and the patience to do what I did in my 20s and all that stuff. But I tell you right now, I don't know if I could ever do it again, right? Something like that again. It was very, very difficult. But maybe, looking back, um, I'm really glad I did it. So, um, the when it comes down to it, once you leave the world of such a high stress environment with a lot of smart people, and you get into a more calm world with like all types of people, one of the things I noticed is that there's just not people don't have a lot of urgency. So I kind of had to like relax. People don't need things right away. And also, I realized that when I left the military, you got to keep the good parts, the organization, the being on time, the you know having standards for yourself, cleanliness standards, and all that. That luckily I kept, but all the bad stuff like the bitterness, I let that wash away and go away. Right. So when I got left out the military, I wasn't bitter anymore about anything. I just kind of let it go slowly. Then the pandemic happened. When I got out, the pandemic happened, and I got kind of bitter with like society and how like dumb everything was and how nothing made sense and all that stuff, right? Like, why do I have to wear a mask until I walk into the restaurant and sit down? Right? I don't have to wear a mask while I'm running on a treadmill, right? All these things happened, and I was like, again, I became bitter again. I was like, wait, I'm doing it again, right? I gotta let go. This is out of my hands, right? So I decided to put myself in a more happier place. I moved to Dallas. I started dating. I learned about women, and then I had been tweeting for years, and then I realized like, hey, um, I have some kind of talent, right? I have a way of thinking that's different. I had a very difficult job before. I have a different perspective. Maybe I have something to offer, right? And then I wrote the dating thread in 2023. Now I could have wrote it before, but I was just like mentally. The beginning of 2023 is like when my dating kind of like not stopped, but I had to take a step back, right? I was like, hey, this is like I'm burnt out. I learned so much from women. I try to have relationships. They failed. Some of them were fun. But like now I have all this experience. And then I assumed that everyone else had a certain level of experience, but it turns out we don't, right? Or they don't. So I'm glad I was able in my 20s to build myself a foundation for a career and skills. That way I have the time and energy and effort to talk to you today about this stuff, right? So being a nuclear operator is always going to be a part of my personality. It's a part of my username, and it's a part of who I am. A piece of me will always be left on that ship. I suffered a lot emotionally. I don't wish that suffering on anyone. I did the best I could. I forgave myself for not being the best reactor operator. I made mistakes. You know, there were times where there was big emergencies, and I kept the ship running um, for uh, long in spite of the crazy emergencies, right? Like some of the big, like like every soldier, sailor, airman has like their moment of glory. I had my moment of glory, and I got punished for it, right? I didn't say one phrase or invoke a phrase that would make the whole ship go into a battle a wartime configuration, right? And because I waited, I'm like, wait, we're not going to wake up the captain in the middle of the night and wake up all 5,000 people to turn this ship into into a wartime configuration, right? So I waited 2 minutes, and everything came back after 2 minutes, thank God. But because I didn't acknowledge that during the this big mass casualty where the ship was shutting itself down, and we were running on single reactor, and I was trying to push to keep the reactor online and all that, right? Um, uh, you know, I essentially I still believe I did the right thing, but to this day I look back at that and it's just like, was that my greatest one of the greatest things I've ever done, or was that a failure? And I still don't know, right? And that's just every military guy has like that, or a lot of military guys have that feeling where they had a situation where it they did the right thing and were they made the right decision, but they still got punished for it. And that was one of the biggest lessons of life, where it doesn't matter how competent you are sometimes, it doesn't matter how great a husband you are, how great a reactor operator you are, how great whatever you are. Sometimes you just don't get you get punished for being good, right? And that's just the way that you get thrown into systems and institutions that punish you for being good, right? So you kind of had to let things go and let life play out and just realize like, hey, you're not always going to get uh, rewarded for the good things you do. Sometimes it's the opposite. So that was a very important lesson for me. And there's other lessons too. Like whenever I got back from my career in the Navy, I felt like, oh, I'm gonna find everyone in my life the same way I left them. Right. I realized that my parents and my brother had moved on to, life had moved on for them while I was always stuck at sea. I just felt like I wasn't connecting with them anymore. And to this day, I don't really connect with people outside of the military like I used to, right? Because the military changed me a lot in terms of my maturity, the way I see the world, what's really out there, working with different people from different backgrounds. So it's like I have a part of me that I just can't share or connect with, right? And a lot of veterans feel this, um, and all that. Um, I miss my friends too. The friends I was in the military with, a lot of them are good people. Luckily, some of them are here in Dallas, um, and all that. So I get to hang out with them sometimes. I wish I should hang out with them more. I should probably hit them up more. But yeah, it's a tough thing to transition to, right? I had a lot of trouble, plus the pandemic. So I was isolated alone right after the military. So I missed my Navy buddies. I was used to be around being around people all the time, and then I straight into a pandemic where there was like no one. to you're just isolated. And I kind of had anxiety attacks that I never had in the military. I had like one anxiety attack when I first did my first drills as a reactor operator, and then I had a I want to say a mental breakdown, but I like punched a wall so hard I made my hand bleed because I was overworked and overstressed. But then I got over a couple minutes later. I was like, ouch, I shouldn't do that anymore. But I had a real anxiety attack when I left the military. I started pacing my apartment because I was just so isolated. I needed human contact, right? And that's why like a lot of people will never forgive what they did during the pandemic in terms of lockdowns because it messed a lot of people up mentally, right? It made us a little weird. It made us a little bit kind of distrustful. It made us a little bitter, like something that won't ever go away, right? And you can't, when that happens, you know, you can't really just go back and be like, oh, it's all water under the bridge, right? I still look back at the pandemic and I still shudder, right? It's also one of the hardest things that I had to go through was the pandemic year on myself, right? I did reach out to family, friends, and all that, and I went and I drove hours to see them, right? Because I didn't want to be alone. But for the most part, I wanted to, you know, um, be around people, like I was. Luckily, I moved to Dallas and my life became 10 times better. It was great. And now I'm happy. Things are going great, right? But like, so if there's any veterans, watch them, take care of them, right? Because military messes you up, right? It's not always a shell or a gun or gun wound or something, or, there's other things that mess people in the military up. I've lost a lot of friends to mental hospital, right? Suicide attempts and all that because of women, and that's one of the reasons women, stress, hardworking conditions, personal problems, all mounting at once. And I can tell you right now, the worst thing is like normalizing this shit, right? Because you'll be in the military and all of a sudden one of your buddies or someone you work with is not there the next day. And you're just like, hey, where'd they go? Like, are they off or they're late or what's up? They're like, oh no, they checked into a mental hospital. They sad panned out, right? And I'm just like, wow, like they were fine the other day, right? Like I was like playing cards with them or I was standing watch with them the other day and then now they're gone, right? So you gotta like I take this stuff seriously in terms of helping guys. It is still a hobby for me. Let me put a panda up there. Hold on. There you go. It should be there we go. We got a panda. It's a new pixel screen I got. It's pretty cool. I could put like anything. Let me see if I got a panda. There we go. Panda eating ramen. There we go. Um, but yeah, it's I take this stuff seriously because I know I've lived with these guys, right? It's really easy to make little comments and videos on incels and disenfranchised men and make money on YouTube off of the situation of these guys, right? But when you have to live with them and coach them and teach them how to operate nuclear reactors and escort them to mental hospitals and then learn that they tried to, what their wrist or try to unalive themselves, right? And then eventually one of them is your friend, right? Who's also Dominican like me. You kind of look at people who give misinformation more with more hatred, right? Because that misinformation is leading men to slaughter, literally to slaughter, right? Again, there's a reason we talk about this intersexual dynamic stuff, and it's not because I just don't like women or I want to, I'm insecure. No, it's because this is comes from experience. This is written in blood, right? It's written in human lives sometimes, where you have to kill the beta before the beta kills you, right? That's not to say go do what other content creators do as they say, like exactly what they say, right? But we're telling you this so you don't end up in a situation like this where you're thinking that like you're looking for a permanent solution for a temporary problem, right? Because it's really easy to make content about guys being disenfranchised, right? But it's like when you've lived with these guys that don't have any chance with women and they're suffering, right? It's different. And it's just like this is the reason why I wanted to do it, because these guys would come to me. They thought I was a little good with the girls and all that, but they wanted information and all that stuff. And I was like, hey, I have something that I've been reading. I've been going on forums since 2012 about red pill stuff. I read the Rational Male in 2014. This is what I know. You got to be careful. And to them, it sounded like I hated women or I was some kind of pimp daddy. But I'm just like, no, dude. I'm telling you, it's for your own safety because throughout the Navy, throughout our ship, you could see examples of this, right? You don't want to get a Me Too. You don't want to get divorced after marrying a girl. You don't want to do certain things that'll put you in a situation mentally which will break you. You want to be careful, right? It's a new world, right? And I don't want anything to happen to anyone. It's not worth it, right? Um, and I really wish that what I knew now I could tell them then. I didn't know as much then, right? But there's a reason we do this, and the number one reason will always be to improve lives, men's sexual power in the dark marketplace. It sounds like we're denigrating women at the cost of it, right? But I think I'm okay with making women feel a little icky and uncomfortable in order to keep a man sanity and most importantly his life intact, right? So, yeah. Uh, my my son knows exactly what you're talking about. Oh, okay. In terms of the Navy, in terms of my life on board a ship, PSI, have you ever gone to therapy? No. My friend is going to therapy and he feeds me stuff that he learns in therapy and he says that one of the things that they did to us was dink hours. Like dink meet is short for delinquent in quals. And basically, if you're behind on your quals, they put you in a room after work every day or after watch for like hours so you can study and catch up. You can't go get qualified. You have to study because apparently to them it's like, hey, you're not studying hard enough, and you have to sign in a logbook, and you can't skip those hours. They'll come find you. They'll come find you, right? And that they call that psychological terror in the therapy world. I'm like, oh, crazy. That's great. I had to do a lot of those because I fell behind sometimes. So yeah. Mexican American. My silver lining of the lockdowns was that it accelerated my divorce and me discovering the red pill before complicating life with kids. Oh, there you go. Silver lining to everything, right? It's hard to adjust to getting out, harder than I expected by far. Oh yeah, I underestimated too. My God, it was so tough. It wasn't until like the end of 2021, and no, end of 2020, where I was like, wait, I'm outside of the military. I had a lot work with my coworkers, everything. I had so much trouble adjusting. I underestimated it, you know. Can you put Ask and Bio on the pixel screen? I'll, maybe next time. Guys, if you give me a super chat, I'll search here on the app something to put on the pixel screen. Like for right now, I'll put on pandas because for some reason I'm in the mood for pandas. There's that panda. There's that panda. There's this panda. It's so many pandas. Trying to find a cool panda. Ooh, this one's interesting. Panda with the star. But yeah, it's just a little gift I got myself for my birthday. It's a pixel screen. It has a lot of cool stuff to put on. So here, panda eating bamboo. There we go. And then we have a DJ Panda. There we go. Yeah. Have you ever gone to talk therapy? I understand government helps in a way. No, but yeah, maybe I should. I'm not really like I'm fine. I have a psychologist friend, and she tells me like I told her like, hey, like I'm fine, works fine, not really like I get up, I'm very disciplined. I go to the gym, I walk my dog, my apartment's clean. Like there's no sign that I'm suffering from anything. I'm very calm and peaceful, um, and all that. So it's just like I think I took care of it myself in my own life with discipline. And I didn't say like I didn't clean my house today. I must be sick. I'm like, I'm just tired. And the next day I clean up my house or take care of what I need to take care of. And I'm just like, oh, okay. And she told me like, hey, as long as your life is going smooth, you don't need therapy. And I'm like, sounds good. But maybe one day, maybe I'll get bored and check it out. But How did you get to know about the rational male? Well, I was always like, I started with 48 Laws of Power, and then I started delving into men's groups online, and I found the Roosh V forum, and then I found Return of Kings, and I think Rolo was a contributor on Return of Kings. Read his articles, liked the stuff, and then he was marketing his book that he just dropped, and then I read it, I bought it, and I read it because everyone was talking about it on Roosh V forum, I think, and yeah, that's started my red pill journey. So yeah. How are you friends with former military people because civilians can't relate? Yeah, how are you are friends with former military people because civilians can't relate? Yeah, because it's just different connection. It's just, thank you, sir. No problem. Um Filipino. Are you really Filipino? Maybe I could put up the Filipino flag for you up here on the pixel display. Let's see. Search Philippines. Oh no. There we go. There's your flag. There you go. Beautiful flag. Beautiful women. But yeah, there you go. Let's see. Just like with chiropractors, the right therapist can help, the wrong one can hurt. Yeah. I just don't want to waste my time in an office. Someone to tell me, hey, military is bad. You suffer from this. I'm like, great. Like, my life is like, I fixed my life. My life is awesome right now. Why, like, I don't want to go to therapy. Like, I'm not curious about what mental issues I could have because everything seems fine. Right. Um, if I go, it's like I want it to be useful, right? Which is the problem with therapy. Is a lot of times guys say it's not useful. So but yeah, maybe one day I'll go. Who knows? But anyways, guys, that's just a small window of my life. Obviously, there's much more to my life in the military, but just wanted to give you guys a little bit of nuke lore and why that way I am, and all that stuff. And I just wanted to, share a little piece of my life. It's very important. Like I said, there's a part of my life that will always be on, like, a piece of me will always be on that ship, and I will always reminisce about days, the tough days, the ones that made me who I am. Um, I still feel privileged. I got to serve in the United States Navy. This is the greatest country on earth, guys. It doesn't get any better than this, right? There's people that want to destroy it, right? And imagine, like, everyone's biggest complaint right now. I mean, there's the immigration thing, but like hopefully they do something about that because I think we're reaching critical mass with that. But um in terms of like intersectional dynamics and women being shitty and all that stuff, learn this red pill stuff, right? Because it's like you're taking the one of the biggest flaws of America and you're turning it into a positive. And why not, right? We already have the greatest economy, greatest military. We have lots of opportunities and all that. And now, we talk about, hey, women suck. And I'm like, yeah, they do. But like, let's learn some. Let's learn a praxology to help us deal with it and to give us more power in the sexual marketplace. And we do that, and now America becomes even better, right? Now, am I saying don't go overseas to find a girl or to have fun? No, have fun, right? Like I said earlier, like maybe going overseas to experience true femininity just so you know what it is a good idea, right? I experienced true femininity since I was a kid because I lived in Latin America, in Puerto Rico for a lot of my time, even though I'm Dominican, but my parents were stationed in Puerto Rico. But yeah, once you figure this girl stuff out here, you took one of the things that America is known to be shitty at, and you've learned a set of a praxology in order to deal with it, right? And that's why it's so awesome that we get to have this information shared by thousands of dudes, and then a couple dudes took their experiences of forums and blogs and their good writing skills and turned it into a book. And all you got to do is read it and follow it, and you'll be fine, right? Uh, don't worry about the debates, right? Those are people that are trying to push their ideology down your throat and tell you that there are ways to be like me, it worked for me, right? But you got to do what works for you. And the only people that tell you to do what works for you is the red pill. The people that make red pill content make red pill content, right? If they're telling you something else besides do what's best for you, then that's not red pill content at all, because that's not the point of the red pill, right? Um, and take it seriously, guys. Don't that is it's not always meant to be taken literally, but it's meant to be taken seriously. It'll save lives. It saves lives, right? And it definitely helped me a lot in my military career. Um, so yeah, God bless America. That's all I got to say. Anyways, guys, that's all I have. Uh, you guys know where to find me. Linktree, Nuclear Galileo on everything. Follow me on Patreon, support there. And I'll see you guys on Rule Zero on Saturday. So thanks a lot.